Good. I hope you remember that in the introductory chapter I spoke about the civilization background of environmental history. It's like European civilization or Euro-Atlantic civilization based to the Greek and the Judeo-Christian heritage. This is the background. The basic concept, the basic axiom came from this civilization background. The second one are ancestors of environmental thinking. Geographer, ecologist, historian try to describe the interaction relation between physical environment and society in the past and even in the recent time. Anyway, this was the last slide in the last week when a formalized environmental history in the 60s and 70s, ecology became a form of global thinking. Because before the 60s, environmental ecological thinking was a subdiscipline of biology. But in consequence of Rachel Carson and the new general meaning, new general approach to the human history, ecology became a form and the direction of political activity, partly, and partly each of discipline, like sociology, like philosophy, like history and economics, form a reflection to the ecological thinking, and form environmental history, environmental sociology, environmental economics, and so on and so on. Therefore, recently, if we are speaking about ecology, this is the each of thinking, each of intellectual direction, there is a form of ecological reflection. Not by chance, the first international organization founded at the United States. Why? Because in the history of United States, transformation of physical environment started only 19th century. And therefore, the memories of generation set the condition before the environmental transformation. In Europe, environmental transformation started at the Bronze Age, 4,000 years ago. Therefore, generation by generation, even from antiquity, was born in modified physical environment. Okay, I am a founding member of European Society for Environmental History. How we can define? We are over the introduction, disciplinary interaction. Look at a possibility of definition. How we can define environmental history? The first approach, Donald Hughes is a very seminal scholar of American environmental history, published 2008, one very seminal study about environmental history, and defined three criteria of environmental history. The culture and nature is a continuum. I spoke about ecosystem. We can describe the human history ecosystem, and no reason divide two parts of physical environment and society living together. At the introductory lecture I spoke about that environmental history introduced two important peculiarities to the historical thinking. The first one, environment, physical environment, change in the historical past, partly, and partly we are animal nature, humans, and the humankind not only culture bearer, but even animal. There are and there were biological needs for survival. Okay, this is the first one. And the second one, environmental history used interdisciplinary methodological background. What mean? Each discipline, physics for example, biology, history, geography, there are a special methodology. If somebody would like to verify some information, it's mandatory use geographical, historical, sociological methods. In the environmental history, very open. Use methodology of the physics, and biology, geography, history, sociology, everything. It's very open. And the last one, use a very, very sophisticated time and the space concept. I will speak about a little bit later. Good. Look at the methodology. A methodology, it's a simplification a little bit. It's the most important groups of evidence divide. I copied from the climate history, but more or less the same in the case of environmental history. Evidence of past climate, past environment, in general sense. Field evidence means unnatural evidences. Pollen analysis, for example, oxygen analysis, carbon analysis is a natural science. And the documentary evidence is from archives. And between the documentary, historical, and the field evidence, archaeological evidence. Did you participate in archaeological excavation? No?
No.
Never. It's a very interesting place because, for example, during my secondary school studies, 2 summertime, I worked as a worker in the archaeological excavation. It's very, very interesting because somehow reconstruct the body for its symmetries of the body, of the dead bodies, and the material culture, and looking how lived in the historical past, generation 2 or 3,000, 10,000 years ago. It's very interesting. And combine a little bit the documentary evidences. For example, there is some writings on the for example, on the stones in the archaeological site, or material evidences, for example, seeds, cereal seeds, for example, some construction, the coffin, for example, different kind of the wooden material. Therefore, archaeological evidences there is between documentary and field evidence. The typical field evidence is physical, chemical, biological evidences, written and iconographic evidences. For example, if you know that before the recent meteorological age, the recent warming, the last closed climate period named a Little Ice Age. You listened about it? There is info. Little Ice Age. Started in 14th century and closed at the beginning of the 19th century. You know the name of Dickens, Charles Dickens, author of British literature. And you remember the stories of the Dickens at the beginning of 19th century. If somebody, for example, in January, walking in the British landscape, frozen. So harsh the winter on the 19th century, frozen. The Thames, the Seine, the Rhine, and the Danube frozen over, year by year, because it was a very, very cold climate, very cold climate. And a little bit same situation in the history of England. I analyzed the landscape pictures and how changed the color of sky. Why? Pollution. Because in the English history used huge quantity of coal, and it's not a clear version of the coal. It's polluted with sulfur. You know, the sulfur. And the color of sky, step by step, century by century, became more yellow, deeper and deeper, in consequence of pollution, because used in the heating a coal. Because a charcoal was optimal for it's other story, not sophisticated. Okay, written and iconographic evidences. Did you listen about dendrochronology? Did you see, for example, tree rings? Yeah, tree rings. Trees living in the seasonal climate. Each year, it's grow 1 tree ring, and we can recount the age of the tree if we count the number of tree ring, and the size and the color and the content of tree ring depend on the climate, local climate around the tree. Therefore, first time in United States, Andrew Ellicott Douglas was the first physicist who verified that with help of dendrochronology, able reconstruct not only the age of the tree, but the climate around the tree. And he was the first person who verified and verified that in the historical past unfolded climate changes. For example, you know the Pueblo Indians? Pueblo Indians, according to civilization level in northern part of America, between the high civilization of Aztecs and the Maya civilization and the nomadic people on the northern part of United States. Constructed buildings, for example, in a dried riverbed, and the raw material used for construction are basically wooden material. And Andrew Ellicott Douglas used, for example, dendrochronology for dating of this archaeological site construction. And later, why dried out the riverbed used for climate reconstruction. This was the first evidences with help of natural science field evidences verified that in the historical past happened climate changes, because the 19th century it was a generally accepted axiom that environment never changed. We are living on the same environment like the ancestor in the antiquity. It's not true. First time dendrochronology verified that's not true. Environment changed in the historical past. And in Europe, a little bit more complicated using dendroclimatology and the dendrochronology. Why? Because in United States there are long-living trees, pines, for example, Brybacum pine, 5,000 years long Brybacum pines. In Europe, the typical is an oak. It's an oak. You know which is the oak. Is that general age? It's a long-aged oak. It's 500, not 1,000, 500 years. But there is a floating chronology technology using, for example, take a sample. Come in. No problem. No problem. You can see the early part of the lecture by video. It's yours. Okay. Anyway, a floating chronology means take a sample from, that's not necessarily hewing down all of the tree. Take a sample with help of drill from the tree and take a sample, for example, a hut or, for example, churches and the cathedral in France, for example, on the Middle Ages, constructed 10,000 cathedral, and the roof of cathedral constructed the timber material, taking a drill, a sample, and able take a new sample, and overlapping, with help of overlapping technology, we can increase the time size of dendrochronology. The next one, take from the peat bog, you know which is the peat bog, it's a marshland area. And with help of this technology, overlapping different sample, constructed in North Ireland, it's longer than 5,000, and the Rhine Valley is the German oak chronology, more than 8,000. This was the next step. Even not only in United States verified that environment changed in the historical past, but even in Europe. Okay, look at the next one. Isotope analysis. did you listen about something about isotope analysis? Basically used a proportion of two isotopes of the oxygen. The first one, the stable oxygen, is oxygen 16. Oxygen 16. This is the stable version. But in consequence of solar radiation, in consequence of temperature, increase a quantity of oxygen 18. Oxygen 18. Therefore, the oxygen 18 indicator of temperature changes in the historical past. And for example, material content oxygen, like for example ice cover, it's able to save information about climate changes. For example, in Greenland, drill a very deep sample and analyze with help of methods of chemistry the proportion of oxygen 90. And I worked during my young researcher age and period. I worked in Czech Republic in the Masaryk University in Brno, and one of my colleagues participated in a project of climate reconstruction. It was a Danish academy organized project, and it was a lot of story about living in Greenland. Did you visit it in Greenland? Not yet. It's a very dangerous place. It's very recently, in consequence of global warming, you know, for example, project of Trump, it's conquering and occupy Greenland because in the next generation probably became much better physical condition for living in Greenland, but recently it's quite a harsh area. But living in Greenland, recently majority, there is some military camp, military basis, but majority it's a research camp, research basis located to Greenland. And very interesting, there is a underground rivalry between different scientific bases. It's a rivalry, it's a consummation of alcohol. Because it's in the experience of humankind, how can survive a harsh environment. For example, drinking a short drink. And the winner, the Russian, of course. But my question, who is the second one? You can use the, for example, national prejudice. Who is the second in the alcoholism? A European country.
Poland?
Winner is Poland. Why? The second exporter of vodka is a Poland. Moreover, whole of the 19th century, Poland was, majority of Poland anyway, it's a principality of Warsaw, under direction of Russia. It was one province of Russia. And learn a lot from Russian. And then I was very surprised that Polish was the second one. I don't know why. Okay, but it's very important information. Anyway, took a lot of drills and reconstructed. It's not the best diagram, but more 100,000 years long climate changes reconstructed. This is the same one. How it changed, for example, the concentration and the chemical construction of the sample. And very interesting, not only the climate change reconstructed from the drill sample, but for example, a lot of other information. For example, volcano eruptions. Because on the case of volcano eruption, a lot of material is blowing up to the upper part of the atmosphere and falling down. Therefore, from this sample reconstructed the chronology of volcanoes. The second one, which very interesting information, if you listen, for example, to this lecture, you can switch on the subtitle. Help a lot. To me, anyway, my pronunciation, because it's possible I told to you, that I never learned English at school, never. I received a scholarship to the Bern University at the beginning of 90s because fortunately, I didn't receive job when I graduated. Therefore, because I am not able to photosynthesis, necessary earning money somehow, and receive a fellowship to the Bern University. It's not only German, Swiss German. Therefore, transform my character to the B category of Swiss German. Therefore, the deadline, more or less, I am able to perform. Okay, but turn back to the story. What about? It's associated to something. I lost the line. What about I spoke before my association? Volcano? Okay. I hope we remember. Follow the volcano line. In the case of beside the volcano, for example, layers of Greenland ice cover reconstructed, which was the first global pollution. The first global pollution produced a Roman Empire, a copper industry. Yeah, I remember. Not so fast, but at least. I learned English at the Bern University. I received a fellowship, and I worked together with international team with the project of climate reconstruction. It's named Euroclimate. And on the time, I spoke only French, and therefore each of information, each of important tasks necessary translate to French to me, and slow down the work of team. Therefore, my boss told to me, I have two options. Like, for example, on the Tarantino movie, My Way or Highway. Go back to Hungary, I know Czapy in Hungary, and therefore I walked to the bookshop of Bern University and bought a very old style book of Thomson Martinet, Practical English Grammar. It's published 100 times at least. It's very early version, and started to learn English words and English sentences. Therefore, I have a very tiny Swiss accent because I learned the English in Switzerland. But very high motivation, no other option. Like the pirates, you know the story. The captain of the pirates, how motivate the pirates? For example, attack one ship, commercial ship, burn the own ships, because for the pirates evidently no other option, only conquering, occupy the commercial ships. And this was my situation, because no travel back to Hungary, because I had no job. And started to speak English, and I applied the same technology that Antonio Banderas, you know, Antonio Banderas, famous Spaniard actor, you know, you don't know, former generation, received, for example, a call to Hollywood movie, and he didn't know English, and therefore his agent told to me, if somebody asks you something, answer, I can do it. And I replied the same early phase of education. Okay, turn back to this story. This was the second one, which not only in small size, not only the dimension of 100 and 1,000 years, but more 100,000 years, verified it's true. The climate changed a lot. And verified first times appearance of ice age, you know. And very interesting, the problem of the ice age. Recently, we are living in ice age. It's very surprising, because the global problem is warming. Yeah, but ice age, this is the question of definition. Which is the criterion of the ice age? On the pole, there are ice cover. And recently, look at the northern and southern ice cover. Therefore, according to global geographical definition, we are living in ice age. If we melt this ice cover, we step out. And very interesting, if we are looking at the history of the Earth, more or less 4.6 million or billion, it depends, American or British English, years. And only 11% of this period were ice covered on the poles. Therefore, in global sense, ice age is very rare even. We are living in very rare period and very strange period of the history of the Earth. Okay, the next one, glacier analysis. A glacier analysis. Glacier, it's a frozen river. It's a frozen river. Somebody walked on the glacier, alpine region, visited on glacier. It's very dangerous, because a frozen river, there is a rupture, a lot of rupture. If somebody falls down, it's no way to escape. It's very dangerous. And the speed, the technology of the ice frozen river, that on the snow cover, upper part of the snow cover, there are valleys. It's snow is falling, and on the valleys it's accumulating, and frozen, melting, finally transformed to ice. And the gravity, which is one of the most important power on the Earth, it's activate moving downward until the level of snow cover. And in colder period, a snow cover is moving down. In warmer period, it's moving up. And on the snow line, it's a glacier, it's mud, and continue like a stream or like a small river. Not by chance did you visit in Alpine Austria or Switzerland or Alpine region of Germany. It's very interesting that unfolded and developed alpine cattle herding. Cattle, you know, for example, recently in the kindergarten, if asked one urban child, which is the color of the cattle? Purple, of course, purple. Because in the milk chocolate is a purple. Because personally nobody meets a real cattle. But it's very interesting. I socialized a late phase of traditional society. Eastern Hungarian village. I live on the household had 2 cattle, 1 bull, 10 pigs, and a lot of animals. My mother told to me, it was very nervous because I visited to the stable and spoke with the cattle 1 or 2 hours. It was dangerous because my mother told to me it's very dangerous because if I behave like in public places close to the mental hospital. But I realized the trajectory of my life because during my childhood I spoke only for cattle and recently for audience. Therefore, move upper level my education activity. Okay, and somebody know, turn back to the real question. The real question, how many liters water drinking one cattle? It's crucial information for survival. How many liters? Yvonne? How many liters water drinking one cattle? It's a guess. No any consequences.
Yeah, okay. I guess.
You know which is the cattle. It's walking and okay?
Yeah.
You know, we realize.
I guess.
I spoke to
a day, you mean?
day by day. How many liters?
I think 4.
4? 4.
4 liters, yeah.
4 liters. 4 liters. The first offer. How many liters?
I would have ended a 0, 14.
40. 40 liters. How many liters?
Maybe 6.
That
6.
6. 6 or 16? 6.
6.
6. The answer is 100 liters.
Wow.
One cattle. The size of cattle, it's a change between 700 to 800 kilogram. Moreover, the milk who came from the cattle, in the good species, 40 liters per day, 30 liters. Therefore, this is the solution. How can organize the cattle herding, grazing on the upper part of the mountain area? Drinking melted ice on the snowland. And the classical herding technology is the winter time. It's spent on the valleys and walking up until the line of the snow and turning back, up, down, up, down. Therefore, in the Alpine region, there is a very well documented chronology how changed the size of the glacier. Why? Because this is the drinking place for the large herd of the cattle, more hundred animal. Therefore, it's Alpine agriculture, animal husbandry is a crucial information. And the herds came back to the valley, to the village, and complained, for example, changed the position up and down. Therefore, about the changing of glacier, which function like a thermometer, during rainy period and cold period increase the size of glacier, and dry period it's melt back. If you walk, for example, recently to the Alpine region, there is a milestones that here was the position of the glacier in the middle of the 19th century, here at the beginning of 20th, and melt back recently, more 100 meters. It's a crucial indicator of global warming, for example. And on the time of Little Ice Age, the size of the glacier increased, destroyed villages, for example. Destroyed villages which constructed in upper part of the Alps. Okay, for example, this is a diagram which reconstructed based to documentary sources. Why? Because the Alpine area, and I was very surprised and lived 1.5 years in Switzerland. And my colleagues told to me, because recently one of the richest country, whole of the world, Switzerland. But Switzerland historically was a poor country until the 20th century. Very poor country. Why? Because no arable land, and animal husbandry, the best form of the agrarian and economic activity. Look at, for example, somebody know which are the bodyguards of the Pope, Roman Catholic Pope. Swiss halberdier. Why? Because on the age of Little Ice Age, so poor the Swiss people that traveled as a guest worker. In the guest worker, recently who are the guest worker in Europe? Philippines or out of Europe. But on the time of Little Ice Age, a guest workers came from mountain area. Why? Because the Little Ice Age became cold, the climate, colder and colder, decreased the size of vegetation period, decreased the size of area of cultivation, therefore no other option. And who is the best paid guest worker? The soldier. The soldier. Because offer life for the master. And the best soldier on the time were the Swiss halberdier. And the Pope, who very important, the personal security, invited and saved the tradition in this position, the Swiss halberdier, but on the mid-ages and late Middle Ages, it was poor people and very motivated because you receive a regular salary and you received a regular salary yet? Received? No, not yet. It's very good. Even in Switzerland. I enjoyed, for example, when I received my scholarship to Switzerland, it was a miracle. At the turn of 80 and 90s, I came from the traditional. In the year of my birth, it happened 1963. Introduced electric supply in my village. It's very surprising. Very surprising, for example, my younger son was born in 2008. I'm not able to tell about my childhood because no overlapping the basic category. I came from traditional time. And for example, my son not able to survive without Wi-Fi. Not able. Like for example, addicts. There is, for example, no Wi-Fi, no internet. It's living that it's lost the oxygen. Therefore, change a lot the world. Okay, but when I first time met the modern world, receive a salary. Not salary. It's a fellowship, and necessary sent to the bank, and therefore I had to open bank account, and I walk in the first bank which I found in the downtown of Bern. It's USB. It's a second Union Bank Suisse USB, and some people approach to my direction and stop. I would like to open one account. And only one question. I have passport. Yes, it's no problem. No problem. And following day, I had account and showed to me recently, probably you don't understand my problem, but showed to me how I can use the bank automat. It was a miracle. I received money for one machinery, not person machinery. And for example, which majority of Hungarian bank automat not able to offer at the beginning of 1990s, that offer which notes I would like cash taking from withdraw from the bank automat. In Hungary, even though majority of bank automat is by chance receive the notes by chance. Okay, that's my story. Turn back to because it's not scientific information, but somehow I am working with my biography and I try to show how a lot of change in this aspect in the modern time. Okay, turn back to the story. Basically, you can follow the diagram. It's growing the size of glacier. It's withdraw. It's grow, withdraw, go, withdraw. It's indicate, for example, this is the period of Little Ice Age. Little Ice Age didn't mean that the temperature changed, but the volatility of climate increased. But some period was quite warm. But the volatility of climate increased, and the coldest period was unbelievable harsh on the time. The average is much colder than before and after. Before, its period name medieval warm period. Probably you listened about Vikings, Norsemen discovered Iceland, discovered Greenland, discovered the way to America. This is the warm period, and we are living in the modern warming, global warming period. Between these climate periods located the Little Ice Age. Okay, look at the next one. Okay, some paintings about the position of the glacier here. This is the Zermatt glacier, Gorner glacier. Okay. And with help of paintings, it's a classical 19th and 18th century style painting, verify the location of the glaciers on the historical past. Grosser Glacier, a similar diagram, verify well the period of Little Ice Age and how change growing and withdrawal period of the glacier. Okay, the next important indicator and evidence of climate and environmental change are sediments. If we are looking at the sediment, there are two basic indicators of the allocation of sediments: the form of transport, river, wind and glacier, and place of accumulation, sea, ocean or lake. For example, you can see a Rhone flowing into the Lake Geneva, and the color is yellow. Why? Because the quantity of the sediments, in consequence of rainy period, probably increased. And it's possible you listen which is the nickname of Tisa River in Serbia. You know Tisa River nicknames. It's a blonde or blondie, it's a yellow. Why? Because very high the density of floating sediments in the river. The same like in the sea. And accumulate in the lake. Look at, for example, it's Crimean Peninsula. Did you visit it in Russia? No? Very interesting intellectual experience because I'm a geographer. And my university studies, it was in the 80s. And 3 times for geographical field trip, I traveled to the Soviet Union. It was very interesting. Very interesting, but our position in Soviet Union, we was the great white man from West. Basically different when I visited in Switzerland, I was the Eastern in Switzerland. And in Russia, I was the representative of Western civilization. Basically different. But, okay, but visiting in Crimean Peninsula, it was unbelievable geographical and historical experience. Not by chance so high the rivalry between Ukraine and Russia even recently. And very interesting the story. I open a bracket. It's not connected to the sediments, but look at the Crimean Peninsula. If we are looking at the Black Sea, a Black Sea and the Crimean Peninsula was a part of Greek civilization in the antiquity. The first layer was the Greek civilization. Around the coast of the Black Sea founded a lot of Greek colonies. And probably in the news you listen the name of Mariupol. It was a very harsh battle. Mariupol, it's founded by Greek colonizer. And if we are looking the Greek, you are a geographer, okay. If we are looking, for example, the definition of Europe, the first time defined Europe by Greek, in the Greek mythology and the Greek geography. In the Greek mythology, Europe, Europe, more exactly, a Phoenician princess, and the main god of the Greek mythology, Zeus. It's on the form of a white bull. It's how the name is. It's abduct Phoenician princess. It's abduction of the. This is a mythological record. But look at the geography. Which is the frame of Europe for Greek geography? Western border, the pillar of Hercules, Gibraltar, Strait Gibraltar. Pillar of Hercules, God, Greek mythology, Gibraltar. But the eastern one, Don River. Recently, the war between Russia and Ukraine, it's happened on the old Eastern European boundary. Because the Ural Mountain, recently official eastern boundary of Europe is a Ural Mountain. But it's a new innovation. It's an innovation of the 18th century when started on the age of Peter the Great and the Catherine the Great, European project in Russia. A Swedish geographer in Russian service suggested to Russian rulers that much better taking the eastern boundary from the Don River to the Ural Mountain. And the international public of geographers accepted. But historically, the eastern boundary of European continent and European civilization, this is the front line between army of Russia and Ukraine. It's very surprising. The historical deep ruptures, the critical situation, reactivate. Okay, but turn back to the sediments, more peaceful topic. Okay, sediments over. Look at, for example, a lake sediment line of Crimean Saki Lake on the Crimean Peninsula. Higher quantity of sediment indicate rainy period, and the lower quantity of the sediment dry period. Therefore, the sediment able, and moreover, a lot of other form of sediment analysis possible. And the next one, fauna analysis. Fauna analysis. You know the night birds. Night birds. For example, in the inner part of this building live 3 night birds. It's a part of the brand of Faculty of Education. 3 night birds living on the trees. Okay, on the court. Yeah, there we are. There is some weakness of night bird digestion. Not able to digest 2 elements of small mammals. Skin and bones. Therefore, after the night hunting, turn back to the nest on the trees here and vomit the bones and the skins of the hunted animals. It's simple information. But one very important Hungarian geologist who analyzed the caves, speleologist, specialized to the cave analysis, discovered that some night bird living inside of the cave, no any form of erosion. Therefore, accumulated year by year, century by century, huge quantity of bones and the skins of rodents. And for example, rats and mouse, a lot of small mammals. And if analyze the environmental needs of small mammals, able recalculate the temperature. Because each mammals, there is an optimal climate. And the change of construction of mammals on the vomit of night birds, able reconstruct it. It's very complicated and very sophisticated, but very clever innovation. And Kordos reconstructed to the last 10,000 years how changed the climate in the Carpathian Basin, based to vomit of night birds. It's interesting. It's very interesting innovation. Okay, you know the pollen analysis. Each plants, flowering plants, had a pollen, and the pollen able to save the integrity for 25, 26,000 years, and which are the ideal place for pollen analysis, generally marshland area. Marshland area. Why? Because in the time of flowering, falling down, water-covered area, and it's drying out, and taking a drill to the soil of sediments of the lake, and able reconstruct how change the climate. How change the climate? You know, spruce, for example, this is a profile of the Chatsworth Bow in Illinois, in central part of United States, on the age of closing of Great Ice Age. Great Ice, not a Little Ice Age, Great Ice Age. First time appeared the spruce, a pine. It's a simple form of the pine. Later, it's a frondiferous forest, ash, elm, oak, indicate the climate became warmer and warmer. And later, the grass, ragweed goes with sage, a low grass vegetation. Pollen analysis able to reconstruct how change the climate, how change the environment. The weakness of pollen analysis, it's a dating. It's a dating. We are not able to date for example, 1 year happened. There is a sometimes 100 years flexibility of the dating. Okay, and finally, the documentary sources. The documentary sources. Basically, there are two groups of documentary sources. Man-made sources for climate, narrative sources, economic, pictorial, newspaper, occasional epigraphic sources, individual, early instrumental. This is the documentary sources, basically, man-made. And the second one, institutional. The first one was the personal, the second, institutional. Book of accounts, report about the weather damages, for example, early newspaper published information about the local disaster, official letter, ship logbook, and systematical meteorological observations starting only in the 18th century. And how we can using a lot of documentary sources. For example, there is a hail, there is a earthquake, there is for example, a frozen over the river. It's very interesting. Basically, I learned at the Bern University this technology. We have a lot of elementary information. Rain, cold weather, for example, flowering the fruit trees, and a lot of information. Therefore, the first step, weighted technology of weighted, it's possible you can use for other contexts. The methods, flexible. Use, for example, personal and use scientific reason. This is the weighted indices model. The basic innovation, which my professor Christian Fischer constructed, using a scale. -3 mean extremely cold or extremely dry. 0 is a normal, and +3 extremely warm or extremely dry. And accumulate huge quantity of documentary information and transform the narrative information to the time series. Why so important? Because we can increase the depth of information about physical environment before the instrumental observation. Okay, you remember the first was the method, the second one, space and time. Space and time. Look at the time first. It's not a philosophical sense, much more in the practical approach to the time. When the human civilization unfolded, two calendary applied. A sun calendary and the moon calendary. Sun calendary and the moon calendary. We are using a sun calendary. You can tell example to the moon calendary. It's not possible, it's true, but to my information, the old Chinese calendary, a moon calendary. Moon calendary. A Jewish calendar, it's a moon calendar. A Muslim calendar, it's a moon calendar. And only the European calendar, but it's a globalized world. It's a proliferated sun calendar. But the majority of all calendar were moon calendar. Moon calendar. Okay. The second milestone on the history of timing, appearance of agriculture. It's an agrarian revolution named in the historical tradition. And increase the importance of vegetation period, the seasons. The season structure is different because in Central Europe we are living more or less a four season. Spring, summer, autumn and winter time. But for example in Mediterranean area only two seasons. Winter half year, summer half year. Season. And very important, when start the tillage, when start the sowing, when start the harvest, therefore appear the vegetation period and the season. Not by chance, look at for example civilization of Egypt. Who are the human resource manager? The priest. The priest calculated the optimal date for tillage, optimal date for harvest, and increase inside of the calendar the importance of season. The next one, liturgical hours. Appears a great religious system. The great religious system. For example, a Muslim, Islam, a Christendom, and Confucius-based culture, and which is the not Christendom like religious Taoism. Sorry, it's this is the Chinese religious system. Taoism, no? Tao. A little bit same, but very basic different. If somebody might be the follower of the Taoism and the Christendom too. Therefore, it's a different because if somebody became a Muslim or Christian, no other option. But in Asian tradition, in the case of Shintoism in Japan, there is a possibility of the construction of the more identity. I am a partly Tao followers and a partly Christian. The Judeo-Christian heritage, no option. We can do only one option, no any other. For example, this is the important differences between the Asian and the European types religious thinking. Okay, liturgical hours. How many times necessary to pray in Muslim tradition? How many times by day? 5 times. 5 times into the direction of Mecca. In the Christendom?
3 times.
4 times. 4 times. I was very surprised because I'm a hobby Christian. If I have a free time and God, we can meet on the church. It's a hobby. It's a hobby, not a real. When in the traditional time, waking up and sleeping before the sleeping and 2 times on the day. It was normal. Why? Because a focus of the life in the traditional time was after the death. After the death. Everybody focused. It's a short life, necessary. It's very harsh. It's a curse. We are living in a cursed world. Only survive. But on the heaven, it's real happy, and everybody is living unbelievable good condition. But recently, in the modern welfare state, which is the focus of the life, age 1845. Everybody would like to be young, forever young. It's a classical German alphabet song. Everybody would like to be young. Why? Because the life is 1445. No more. If somebody over with help of surgery and any other manipulation, would like to transform back. And if you know the name of Yuval Noah Harari, it's very famous historian recently. And his career is very interesting because he received a job in the Jerusalem University and received the Vorse course, Introduction to the History. No real material. And the first book of him wrote about this for the student of this course. The title is A Sapiens. And the question, which would like to solve the answer, why the human sapiens became the dominant species of the earth. And very interesting thinking, because follow the trajectory, for example, ability of collaboration, for example, and ability of making a virtual reality. Virtual reality. Because, for example, one economic enterprise is a virtual reality. For example, making a paper and writing to the paper this value of this paper $100. It's a virtual reality. Everybody accepts. And according to, for example, a conclusion of the Harari, basically it's a matrix-like world, you know, this famous Hollywood movie. We are living virtual reality. And this is one of the most important advantages of humankind against any other animal, lions and the camels and any others. Okay, turn back to the story. And the following, the second book of him, titled Homo Deus. Homo Deus. Homo Deus means that the human became like the gods. Not the Yehovah in the one God, but the gods of the Greek mythology. A little bit same like a theory of Nietzsche, you know, the Übermensch. It's a very old ambition of the human that's stepping over the limit of animal. Yeah, animal basically. More or less, and depend on the situation. And basically, according to conclusion of Harari, for example, we became step by step droid. You know which is the droid. It's changing, for example, some for example, heart, liver, and for example, hand, for example, sensors of the human, and somehow robotized the human body and increase the size of the expected living years in this form, and for example manipulate the babies and the intellectual physical capacity. It's others. So to my mind, it's no chance for that because the evolution much deeper than the smart making of the humans. It's to my conclusion, it's not happen. Generation by generation, turn back to the story, but according to my conclusion, no chance for that because based to the rational thinking, and the rational thinking only able to open only one slice of the world. And beside the rational thinking, there are a lot of other strategy of cognition. But recently, the rational thinking is the most successful because able to solve the problems. Okay, but to turn to the liturgical hours, and the last one, a mechanical clocks. A mechanical clocks as everything invented in China, but independently. And very interesting, that first generation of mechanical clocks, it's a mechanical clocks, turned half of the mechanical clocks left to right, other one right to left. Local people knew because it's a huge construction of mechanical clocks constructed to the city hall tower and the church and the tower of the church, and everybody look at that and know which direction turn, left, right, or right, left. But on the time of Enlightenment, 18th century, as metrical system, everything standardized. Therefore, the turning direction left to right. But did you visit it in Prague, capital of Czech Republic? Did you visit it? No? No. I suggest to you, there is a district, Josefov, all Jews district of Prague. Some old style clock survived. Turn right to left. And the tourists who didn't realize from the guidebook, very surprising. Half hour was 2 o'clock, and recently 1:30. What happened? No, it's the scale. It's other direction constructed, but it's exceptional. Some local places for saving the tradition, old style clock survived, but recently standardized mechanical clocks proliferated in Europe from the 13th century. Measuring tools. The simplest measuring sundial. There is to witness if no sunbeam, solar radiation, or cloudy weather don't function. The second one, water clock. It's a barrel, and there is a scale on the barrel. It's used every time during the night, during the cloudy weather, but it's very heavy construction. Incense burner and the candle. You know the movie of Ip Man, you know? He was the master of Bruce Lee. It's a kung fu fighter.
Yeah.
And Ip Man, it's about the master of Bruce Lee. And in Hong Kong, it was a Rome and the most important place of the martial art. And the form of the fight, there is a round table, and two fighters up to the round table, and the timing was an incense burner. It's burned down the incense burner if the winner was who stayed the position on the round table. If both left on the table, it was equal. And the candle in Christian monastery, and finally the mechanical clocks. Good. This is the. Sorry? Everywhere. You are free now here. It's a liberal course. Not all of the country liberal, but this course is a liberal. Okay. Look at the discipline. Look at the disciplinary and the scientific approach to the timing problem. Old style thinking about the history, it's defined linear, irreversible, and cumulative. What mean the linear, irreversible, and cumulative? Linear means the time is unfolding from the past to the future. From the past to the future. Each nation in Africa, in Europe, in China, follow the same trajectory. Antiquity, Middle Ages, modern time, industrialization, and so on, welfare state. The same trajectory. Irreversible. From the recent time, no way out, only into the direction of future. No other way. No machinery of history, no machinery of time to go into back, only to the future. Irreversible. What happened, it's done. No way back. Sorry. And cumulative, because in the 19th century, the historian imagined the history like a huge puzzle, and each human deeds one puzzle. And imagine that the historian able to clarify each deeds, look at the picture of the puzzle, and we are able to understand the meaning of history. This was the meaning of 19th century. But at the beginning of 20th century, proliferated the stock of exchange, the bourse, and everybody would like to earn money. Did you watch Wolf of Wall Street movie? No? It's a history of a broker in stock of exchange, and would like to earn money. How we can earn money on the economy, on the stock of exchange? Able forecast the future. What will happen? Next day, next hour, next week, next month, next year. How we can forecast the future? Two directions. The first direction are, how the name is, it's time series analysis. Which cycle happened? Because at the beginning of 19th century, founded a statistical institution, office and service, lot of information about production, salary, consumption, everything. And able to make a diagram about it. And if somebody buying bill of exchange when the price is low and sell when high, earn a lot of money. A time series analysis, one strategy of work. This is the same, for example, in the meteorology, weather forecast, using time series, which is the probability, for example, of 20 Celsius degree to the following, very high. And time series analysis. Other one, modeling, the models, making a models. If the simplest version models is a Coke model, a Coke automat, taking one coin, receive a bottle of Coke. This is the simplest version. Generally, the more complicated the models, but this is the one operation, one result. And, for example, the efficiency of the water forecast, weather forecast, changing. Why? Because the atmosphere so complicated system that the computer capacity not able modeling. Therefore, there is a uncertainty, continuous. Two-way, time series analysis and the modeling. And economists introduced the cycle analysis. For example, Kitchen, a British scholar, introduced the 40-month-long cycle in economic processes. Juglar is a French scholar, 6 to 8 years, and the Kondrakev, 40 to 60 years long cycle. And very interesting, economists introduced the cycle that some processes turn back time by time. Very interesting in the Chinese historical thinking, is a cycle appeared much former time. Because this is the cycle of dynasty. For example, Ming dynasty, there is a recovery and later decline. Next, Manchu dynasty, up and down. Therefore, in Chinese thinking, the cyclical thinking much deeper, founded even the historical and the general direction and the conceptual frame of the thinking. In Europe, the cycle thinking appeared with the economists and adopted cycle thinking historian a little bit later. Ernst Lagus, a French historian, for example, analyzed the Great French Revolution. Before the Great French Revolution, identified a 10 to 12 years long cycle. And finally, Fellenbroda, he's one of the best or the best historian of the 20th century, identified and described a secular cycle, more thousand-year-long cycle. For example, in European economy. Very quickly, I show to you, and this will be the last slide today. This is the line of the cycle of European economy. One cycle, according to Kondrakev and Broda, we can describe with help of three information. The first information, starting date, A phase of the cycle, turning date, and the B phase of the cycle, and the closing date. Three information. Starting date, turning date, and the closing date. Fellenbroda, with help of secular cycle conceptual frame, described the history of European economy, whole of the European economy. This is the starting date to the first cycle when Europe able to produce surplus. For the trade, no, without surplus. And the turning date is the middle of the 18th century. It's possible you listened about the Great Plague. Great Plague. The Great Plague destroyed 1/3 of European population. No before and no after was a similar human disaster. Never. Each third human died on the time. And which was the most efficient technology against the plague? Quarantine. You remember the COVID-19? The same. No any other. Unbelievable. We are living in the modern industrialized society, and the most efficient idea was in the time of COVID-19, like in the 14th century, quarantine. No any other. No any other. Very old, but very expensive. Okay, this is the turning point, and the closing day is the beginning of the 16th century. This is the discovery of the world, starting date of Columbus sailing to America and later discovered the way to the China, America West, and so and so. And Europe opened the world, and very surprising. I don't know, you know the name of Tsenko, Admiral Chenko or Tsenko. You know the Admiral Chenko? Mm-hmm. Admiral Chenko, he was a Chinese sailor, admiral, not only sailor, admiral, who sailed to Africa and to America. To southern part of America, discovered a Chinese archaeological evidences in Peru, in eastern part of South America. Before Columbus, 50 years before Columbus. Therefore, China had a chance, starting long before the Europeans are organizing a global geographical discoveries. A lot of reason finally didn't happen, but before Columbus, a Chinese discovered the way to Africa and even to America. And finally, geographical discoveries, it's unfolded under direction of European civilization and European trader. This is the closing the first cycle and the starting point of the second one. The middle of 17th century, this is the decline of Mediterranean civilization, because the Middle Ages, which region is the most developed, Venice, for example, and generally Mediterranean world. Genoa and, for example, the Byzantine Empire, and decline, even more. And the closing date, the dawn of industrial and the French political revolution. The third cycle starts when close the second one, and the turning point is closing years of the Napoleonic age. Why so important? Because appeared a new innovation, nationalism, for example. Nationalism. The national identity in the historical past wasn't so important. Why? Because before the national state, majority of states were empire. Empire of Anjou, empire of Plantagenet, empire of Hohenstaufen, empire. And the boundary between the society is defined religion and define the social status. Peasant, citizenry, or nobleman. This is the important. And at the beginning of 19th century, the guiding force of integration became common culture, common language. And disturbed all of the world. The closing year of third cycle is the last decade of the 19th century. Why? Because the last decade of the 19th century was the last peaceful decade. The sliding to the First World War started at the beginning at the beginning of the 20th century. For example, First and the Second Balkanic War, and the war on the Northern Africa, and so on and so. Therefore, this is the last peaceful decade. And the closing, the starting date is the same, and the closing date is 1974. Why? This is the closing date of the greatest economic recovery whole of the human history after the Second World War. Why? 3 decades European economy, global economies, unbelievable, continuously, self-sustainable growth. Look at the population. The population of Europe on the time of the closing year of Second World War, 2.5 billion or million person, and 2006. Unbelievable. Half century, it's more than doubled the population. Okay, we will continue from this slide. Thanks a lot for your patience, and I ask you a little bit.